Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Please let us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Demian Borba. I'm a product manager. Just heard my voice. That threw me off a little bit. I'm a product manager on the Adobe XD team, and I'm super happy to be here with my friends Zach and Tor to talk about design systems. Design systems on the design side of things and also on the development side of things, because the design systems are only complete when we also involve developers. So let's start with introductions. I already started. Again, product manager focused on developer ecosystem for XD. And let's start with Zach.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. I'm Zach Perkins. I'm a strategic development manager on the XD team, and excited to walk you through the design process as it relates to design systems and some of the new stuff we've been working on.
Awesome. And Tor?
Hey, everyone. I'm Tor Gundersen, also strategic development manager on the Adobe XD product team. Zach and I both love design systems, so we're glad to be back talking about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us here, guys. And again, if you have questions along the way, we have people on the chat to help you. And if you have specific things you want to see, you can also stop us at any time. This is really for you guys. So let's get started with the design portion of this design system story. And I will invite Zach to start that conversation. So Zach, it's all with you.
Awesome. So we're going to cover a lot today from both the design and the development side. But for starters, there's been a ton of updates to XD over the last couple of weeks since Max. A lot of stuff that's been released around design systems. As Tor mentioned, it's a topic that's very near and dear to our heart. But before we dive in to give you the kind of full rundown on everything, I just kind of want to start with a quick little overview on what design systems are, just so we could start to level set this conversation. So for us, a design system is a set of guidelines. It's truly these guidelines that are the building blocks that include a set of reusable styles and components that every product experience is necessarily built from. But ultimately, a design system provides that consistent and reusable design patterns that designers and developers and stakeholders can use as a common visual language for creating these experiences at scale. Well, we're going to go through, we're going to run through on how to create a design system utilizing atomic design methodologies for creating those reusable colors and character styles and components, from simple atoms to complex organisms. We're also going to make use of some of the newer features that I spoke about earlier that were released recently, and how those are going to impact your overall design system, from states, padding, and stacks, to truly build the best, most flexible components around. And then we're going to dive right into the new publishing workflow with our libraries, previously known as CC libraries or Creative Cloud libraries. This has been a major leap forward for us and addresses some of the pain points that you have all shared with us. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and dive right in, focusing the session on building and sharing of these assets with both designers and developers. So with that said, I think I'm going to turn it over to Tor, and he's going to walk you through how to assemble this system.
All right. Thank you, Zach. All right. So I'm an XD, and of course, so when you create your design system and you create all of your assets, they're stored over here in your libraries panel, up here where it says document assets. Now you can see sections here where you can store your colors, your character styles, and then most importantly, your components. Now I'm going to start building components, and components are reusable elements that are used to construct a UI. And as Zach mentioned, we typically use the atomic methodology when we are constructing these components. Now, if you're not familiar with the atomic methodology, I will do a quick run through. The simplest elements are called atoms. So, things like buttons and icons. We then combine atoms together to build more complex elements called molecules. And then we combine atoms and molecules together to build the kind of the most complex components called organisms. Now, molecules can be things like cards and accordions, and organisms can be things like tables and navigation, so much more complex. So I'm going to start with an atom, this button here, and I'm going to go through the process of making this a component, and then using this within my card art here to create a molecule. And then I'm going to use this molecule to then help me build my carousel, which will be my most complex component. All right, so I'm going to zoom into my button. And let's see here. First thing I want to do, I'll just show you what it looks like in the layers panel here. First thing I want to do is turn on a feature called padding. Now, padding lets me control the space between foreground and background objects. So it allows me to do something, like this, and change the text in my button here, and the background shape will kind of grow and collapse to accommodate. So with that done, and I'll turn this back to my just kind of default here. With that done, I'm going to turn it into a component. And with that, I'm going to use this little plus sign, this plus icon here over by component. Once I click that, you'll notice a couple of things. One, and if I go back to my document assets, whoops, hold on just a tick. Make sure I've done that right. I selected the right layers. There we go. So now I have my button component. You can see that it's been added over here in my document assets. And you should notice a couple things. One, that the outline has turned to green. And in addition to that, we've got a little diamond, excuse me, folks, frog in my throat. Okay, you'll see a little diamond icon in the top left corner. These things tell us that this is a component. And components have a parent-to-child relationship. So watch as I create a couple of copies of this. Now, our parent components in XD, we call them main components. And our child components we call instances. And you can tell the difference because our instances have this diamond shape is open, and our main components, the diamond shape is filled in. And what this parent-child relationship lets us do is change properties in our main component, like the background color, and it will cascade down to all of the instances. Okay. Now, I can go to any instance, though, and I can override any property of this element without unlinking it from the main component. Now, if I go and I change the color in my main component again, we'll choose this color here, you can see that it's updated in our instance that we have not already overridden that property. So our overrides will stick. Now, if ever you want to reset them, oh, and one thing to note, if you do apply overrides to a component, the diamond is still kind of open, but you'll see a little dot in the center. So this tells us that there's been an override. So if you ever want to reset these properties, you can go down here. You can right click and select reset to main state, and it'll reset everything back to the main state of a component. All right, so I'm just going to undo those things. We'll get rid of these for now. We've got our component made. The next thing I want to do is add a state, a component state. And buttons are a great example for creating component states because they have things like hover states and press states and disabled states. So we're just going to go ahead and create one here. And I'm going to choose hover state. Now, hover state is a special state because it already comes pre-wired for us. And what I'm going to do is, while I have my hover state selected, I'm just going to darken the color just like that. So now you can see I have my default state and then my hover state. And when I mean that it's a special state and it's been prototyped already, if I slip over here in a prototype mode, you'll see a wire with a hover trigger that goes to my hover state. So I'm going to make a couple little tweaks here. And now if I preview this, you can see that that hover is working. Okay, so this is this is how you create interactive components. So it's very important and critical feature when building design systems. And what this means is every time I pull out a copy of this component, I do not have to rewire that interaction. So it's already set. Now I can sit here and build out additional states to this, but I'm gonna move on here. So let's take this button. I'm gonna create a copy of this now that we have this done, and I want to add it to my card artwork over here. So I'm just gonna kind of put it over here. And now my card component, my card artwork anyway, I've already applied padding to it. And I've also applied something called stacks. Now stacks, in a little bit different than padding, allow us to control the spacing between items in our stack. And also I can swap the order of these things as well, very easily. Now you can create horizontal or vertical stacks. Clearly this one is a vertical one. So with that said, I'm going to jump over here into my layers palette. So I've got my button here, and I'm just going to cut it. So on the Mac, I'm going to hit Command X. On the PC, Control X. So now it's on my clipboard, and I want to paste it inside of this artwork. So you can see this is a group. So I can double click to open this. I can just go over to Layers panel and open this as well. So select somewhere inside this group here and just hit paste. And you'll notice that it's actually pasted this right into my stack, which is very handy because I want to reposition it down here and adjust some of the spacing. So now we have our artwork all set up. The last thing we need to do is just convert it to a component. So I'll do the same thing over here, just like that. And now we have our molecule component. And again, and I should note that this is a nested component, right? So I could go back to my main component here, and I could update the color, and you would see that it will update all the instances, even if they're nested inside other components. So the last thing I want to do is, make my molecule or my organism. So I'm going to grab my molecule here, and I'm going to make a copy. And then I'm going to use our repeat grid feature to just draw out a few copies of this, just like that. And I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. So I'm going to select everything here, group it. I'm going to name it carousel, and then I'm going to convert it into a component. So just like that, I've gone from my button atom to a card molecule, and then lastly to a carousel organism. And again, I can go ahead and make any changes to these items, and it will cascade throughout the rest of the experience, everywhere that it's being used. Now you can also, with nested components, say, for example, I want to change the look or any of the properties on just this button that's nested inside this this card. I can change it just here, and you'll see that it will cascade into everywhere I'm using that molecule, but I have not edited the main component. So just another way that you can control the properties of nested components. Now you can use these techniques to create all manner of components and interactive components like drop-down menus, tabs, accordions, tooltips, form elements, and navigations and modals and all kinds of stuff. All right, so we're doing well. We've got our components set up here. The last thing I want to do is I want to add my colors and my character styles. So I can select one element, multiple elements. I can select an artboard. I can select multiple artboards. And to add all of the colors and character styles to my assets panel, all I have to do is click on the little plus right by each one of these, and you can see it's added all those just in a couple of clicks. Now, these are global styles, meaning I can go in here and change any of these just like that, and it's going to update that color everywhere it's being used. Say, for example, I want to update this card title. I'm going to first reveal the character style and asset, so make sure I'm editing the right one. And you can see this is the one that I'm using. I can right-click and say Edit. Maybe I want to change it to be all caps. Maybe I want to change the font to be condensed black or condensed bold. And there we go. You can see it's changed it everywhere that I'm using it. So With colors and character styles and my components now defined in the assets panel, we are all set to go and on our way to building a design system. Okay, so let's shift gears, and I'm going to jump ahead. So here is a file. Here's a design system file. It's actually the Bootstrap UI kit, Bootstrap design system, all recreated in XD. And one great thing about XD is you can use artboards to organize your entire design system. Organization is super important to design systems, obviously, to make sure you're keeping everything together. So you can see I've got my colors defined here. I have, where are my character styles? I've got all my typography set up here. And then I've got lots and lots of artboards for all of my components. And they're all organized by the type of component. So I've got alerts over here, badges, buttons, carousels. Everything is very well laid out, cards. So these are just reusable elements that I'm going to use all over my design. Okay. Now, before I move on, next thing I want to show is sharing. But before I do that, I need to talk a little bit about tokens, because that's going to come up later on when Demian does his VS Code magic. So I'm not a developer, I'm a designer. So the way I like to think about tokens is so super important. But I like to think of them as variables. And it's basically a name. A token name is a name that we can assign to values or attributes. So things like colors and fonts. And then we assign these values to objects in our CSS. So for example, we use the token name, not the value. So say you have Adobe Red, right? We would use the token name of Adobe Red instead of using the hex number, the hex value. And using tokens allows us to make global changes to our design in code in one place, in a single place, by just changing the value of the token and not having to change the hex value that's throughout our CSS and our HTML. So as an example, this might be how we declare a token value in something like SCSS. And this would be how we would apply this to an actual item or an element like a button. So instead of going through and changing, if this were instead the hex value, instead of changing that everywhere, we just change it in this one place where the value of this token is declared. Hopefully that makes sense. I think when Demian goes through his demo, it'll become more clear. So in XD, we can set tokens on both colors and character styles. And it's just as easy as take, for example, this color, which I have not added to my assets panel. So I'm going to add that really quick here. By default, it puts in the hex value. All I have to do is right click and say rename, or I can just double click it. And I'm going to call this primary. And that's all you have to do. Now we've declared a token for this color. Now, if I go up to my character styles here, to this body text here, I haven't added this either to my character styles. So I'll add this in one click, and then I'll rename it body text. There we go. And I can spell, folks, but I can't type. There we go. So body text. So now we've declared a token for both a character style and a color. All right, so what's next? So let's share this, right? So I want to be able to share this with other people. First thing I can do, which is super easy, is I can share this as a prototype. And what I've done here is I've created a kind of an index page that will allow me to link to all the different sections in my design system. And I can share this as a prototype and send this out to anybody so they can check it out. So I am going to, you can see all the wires here to all of my artboards, lots and lots of wires. And what I would do is go over here and then I would share this out as a link. I've already done that, so I'm going to show you right here. So this is the prototype of the design system viewable online. And you can create links that are publicly, that are available to anyone that I send it to. So they're public links. They are not findable, but they are available to anybody. You can also create private links that you can invite people with using their email address. Okay.
Hey,
so you
Tor.
can see here. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but we have a question.
Oh, sure.
People are asking where they can get the UI kit, the Bootstrap UI kit for XD.
Oh, yeah. So it's available. I think we're going to put in some links in the chat.
Yes, let's share the link there.
Yeah. So it's available, I think, as a library too. We
Awesome.
can absolutely share that. Yeah, we'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Demian. So I can navigate to any one of these sections in here and view this. If I'm a developer, I can actually turn on our design specs and get all and look at and find all the different colors that we're using, the character styles, things like that. I can inspect any object, get the size, the sizing, the spacing, the position, CSS snippets, all those kinds of things. So it's a great thing to share out with developers and also just other collaborators. All right, so we're back in XD. So let's take this to the next step. And I want to share this out. We'll do a little role play. So assume that I am a design system manager, and I want to share out this design system both to my designer, Zach, and also my developer, Demian. And I want Zach to be able to use all the styles and components in his work, in his design work. And I also want Demian to be able to consume my design system in his VS Code work. So we have this process that we introduced at Max by way of publishing process, by way of libraries. And libraries are collections of design assets, including colors, character styles, and now components. But additional things if you're using other apps like graphics, videos, audio files, brushes. And they're really the connective tissue between all of our Adobe Creative Cloud apps. So now we can save out all of our styles and components as a library. And you do that here by using this publish button. Let me bring that window down here. There we go. So you can see here that I can publish this design system right here. I've actually already done it, and I have shared it both with Demian and Zach. Now, the other thing I can do here when I share this out is I can give people either view permissions or edit permissions. And edit permissions means that they can actually open the design system file, which is this kind of source of truth XD file, and they can make updates and edits. Now, I want to maintain some governance on my design system, so I'm not going to let Zach, I'm not going to give him the ability to edit my design system, but I'll let him use all of my styles and components. And Demian is not going to be using XD at all, so I don't need to give him edit permissions. And so now that I've shared this out, I'm going to turn it over to Zach so that he can use it in his design. Are you ready, Zach?
I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was jumping through a hoop to share my screen and couldn't unmute in time. So yes, Tor, while you've been working on that design system, I've been actually starting to put together a design that I'm going to leverage that design system. But right after you shared it, I received a notification. You receive these notifications via email, but you also receive them within your Creative Cloud desktop app, which you've seen here. So after the design system has fully synced, and if it's your design system is syncing or any of your libraries are syncing, you'll see that your files are syncing. You'll get some sort of notification here. With that design system already synced, I see it right here within the list of other libraries that I am linked to. This tells me that this system is ready for me to consume within any of the design assets that I'm currently working on. So I'm going to go ahead and close the Creative Cloud desktop app and go back into XD. Since I've previously accepted that invitation, XD automatically turns on that design system or that library for me to consume those assets. Now, if you want to access any of your libraries within XD, you would just navigate over to the libraries panel and click on the browse libraries link. If you don't have any connections to libraries at the time, there'll be a bigger button there for you to click on. But once you click on that button, you can see all the libraries that you're currently connected to, and you can either enable or disable those. In this case, Tor shared the Bootstrap DSP with me. I'm going to go ahead and consume that. So after I've enabled that design system within XD, you can see here within my libraries panel that I have my document assets. Those are all of my local assets and anything that I've created within this local environment. Those could be my own styles, my own components. It could be anything that I'm creating that's not directly coming from that library that Tor shared with me. But you'll also see that I have this Bootstrap DSP library right here. I have all of those beautiful colors and character styles that Tor's put together, as well as all of those components. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start to consume some of these components within my design. I want to use this card, this simple card that I have right here. I'm going to drag that out into my canvas because I'm going to replace these 4 blocks right here. I'm going to go ahead and place that on and utilize repeat grid to stretch this thing out a couple of times so we can fully maximize this card right here. Stretch that out, add a little bit of padding. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search right in here because I want to grab a button. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a button default so I can go ahead and place that down in here. Go ahead and remove that, as well as I might want to utilize this card possibly down here. I'm still kind of working out my design, definitely in the early iteration stages of this. But what you can see is if I navigate back over into, let me clear this search for that button. If I navigate back into that libraries panel and we look both back at the library that's been shared with me as well as my document assets, as I open up my own document assets, you'll see that not only do I have the local components that I have created, and if I scroll up, I made a component out of this logo because that logo is going to carry and be reutilized a couple of times throughout my experience. But what you'll also see here is a bunch of the assets that were coming over from that Bootstrap library. And I know they've come from that library because there's that little link icon to the right of each of these items. And if I hover over that, it tells me that that component or that style in some cases is up to date. And it also informs me of what library it's coming from. So I can still create those local assets and it'll continue to build this list. But the great thing is since I've utilized this as a library and through those linked assets, if Tor were to make any sort of changes, I would also receive those changes naturally as they cascade down through. So you can see easily how I've been able to consume that design system from that library or that library that Tor created into my own experience that I'm creating from a design perspective. But now I'd also like to share with you, or have Demian share with you, of how a developer is also going to consume that library from a developer's perspective.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Zach. Let me share my screen here. All right, and I'll leave select share. And I'll leave Zach and Tor here if they have questions for me. Wonderful. All right, guys. So let's now play the developer role. Like now I'm part of a, let's say, design ops team as a developer, or even a consumer as a developer that needs to build the site, in this case, build the site, right? And we have access to this library with amazing design assets that somehow need to live in code for then developers to build the app or website. And in October, as part of Adobe Max, we announced this new extension for Visual Studio Code. So just search for Adobe XD in Visual Studio Code. If you use VS Code, VS Code is the most popular code editor in the world. Or you can go to their marketplace and you can see you can have XD access to the XD plugin here. Just install that to your Visual Studio Code instances. And then you can start creating what we call design system package. So a design system package, for people interested in what it is this open format folder structure that we created with a bunch of partners in collaboration with a bunch of partners like Google and Knapsack and Arcade, all these great companies that are also tackling the token challenge, to come up with a way of sharing design system information, exchanging design system information in a common way. You can think of a DSP as PDF for design systems, so that once a DSP exists, you can then share across teams and tools in an easy way. So if you're interested in learning more about the extension, you can go to letsxd.com/VS Code. Here you can see in more detail what a token is and how you can use the extension to consume design system packages, how you can create design system packages if you're part of a design ops team. You can also see some existing packages. So we are talking about, for example, the Bootstrap story here as an example, but Foxbox Digital, they created a DSP with Bootstrap 5 elements. So you can learn more about that by clicking here. This is their page, and you can download the DSP as a developer and then start consuming everything in seconds. We also shared another post that's part of this initial page here, where you can learn about specific tips, like in this case, 20 powerful tips that will speed up the creation and consumption process of your DSPs. So again, another great resource, very super short videos to show you how to extend this idea of DSP in our scenarios here. Cool. So, but why DSPs are so powerful, right? Before I jump into the idea of creating a DSP with the link that Tor and Zach have access to as well, the Bootstrap one they're using as an example, I just want to show you a more realistic scenario, right? Let's say I have VS Code here, and I'm a developer working with Adobe components. And I don't know if everyone knows, but Adobe has a design system called Spectrum. And Spectrum has multiple implementations. There's an implementation in React, another one in CSS, another one in Android, iOS. There's a lot of different implementations of the Spectrum design system. And as we created this work for VS Code and Adobe Max this year, we created the first Adobe Spectrum DSP. So whenever you install that, and to install that, you just use npm Spectrum DSP. And then here I have a simple project in my computer. It's going to install now the DSP with all the Adobe Spectrum information that I need as a developer. So it's downloading here. And as it downloads from npm, I just want to show you what this is. So this is a very simple website that is running. And I can go here, and you can see I have access to that that app here running locally. So I can start adding Spectrum components and everything. And of course, I can always go to our website, spectrum.adobe.com. Let's say I need a button for my system, right? I can always go to the website, to the documentation, to amazing tools like Zero Height and Zeppelin and Knapsack to find that information. But let's say here I need to find the button. I need to look for components, actions. Okay, it's the button component. And then as a developer, I'm looking for the React implementation. What I'm trying to show here is that in order to get to the information, I had to stop coding and then go to the documentation site and spend some time trying to find the information that I want just to get to this scenario right here. So by having access to the DSP inside VS Code, so let's get back to VS Code. It's still downloading. I don't know why it's so slow, but let's see if it downloaded already. So this is my node modules folder, and I just want to get to the A and see if we got the Adobe. Yeah, we got it. So it's still downloading, but we got it. It's here. So once things are downloaded, this should be super fast. It's a very light DSP. What I can do here is I can load a package. In this case, I will load the package, and I already found one as I go through the loading process because it's part of this project. And now what you can see is that I have access to that same documentation that I had in the browser now inside VS Code. So I can see the principles, I can see all the tokens that make Spectrum. I can see let's say just the color tokens and the aliases. I can see that button component that I was interested in. I can see all the different implementations of this button component here in VS Code, right? In this case, we're interested in the Spectrum one. the React Spectrum one. So what I can do is I can literally close this, and as I type, let's say I want to find that button component, I just look for the button component, and you can see that I now have access to that, and we're looking for the React one. This is the right one. I can see documentation coming from that DSP that just got loaded here directly in VS Code. And then I can hit enter, and I can say download DSP. Oh, if I can spell it right. Download DSP, perfect, save. And because this is running as a React app, I would see that locally, right? So I can start testing things much, much faster. Again, I don't have to leave VS Code to find the relevant information once it exists in a design system package. Cool, but how can I create a design system package, right? And this is the whole topic for this project. So as you know, we have the Bootstrap 5 documentation on the site, and there's a lot of things a lot of snippets and a lot of information here that they're super useful for developers. But again, they have to get here to get to the right information. You can always download the Foxbox Digital Bootstrap DSP. But let's say, as an example, we want to create one. And this could also apply to your DSPs if you're interested in creating your DSPs. So I will go to assets.adobe.com or to Creative Cloud, the desktop app. And I will look for the library that we have access to, right? So this is the library. All I need to have is access to a link. And in this case, this is a public link, but this could be a private link as well. So let's say I'm now a design ops developer that will create a brand new DSP for us to use. So I have access to this link. I'll go to VS Code. I'll switch gears here. And in this case, instead of loading a package, I will create a package. So I'll create a new package. Let's say my first DSP. I will save this into a location. Let's go to my desktop, DSP creation. That's fine. Open. And the idea here is the minute you create this folder, again, it's just a folder with JSON in it and some assets. You can do, for example, git init. I'll do that. So let's create a package here. Then you have access to which platforms we hope to support, and this will help us to compile tokens to platform-specific code. Let's start with CSS, and later we can add more. And then next, and here's where I can connect to a CC library. I don't have to, but if I want to connect to a CC library link, I can speed up the creation process of the DSP. Then I click skip here because it's a public link. Then I just hit import. When I do import, what's going to happen here is that I will get all the colors, all the character styles, and all the components in my DSP. And then I can see, for example, all the colors that came from there, all the typography collections of tokens that came from there. We suggest 2 basic documentation sites here, but you can add more if you want to. So for example, at any point, I can come here and start editing. And this is just Markdown. So I can edit this and say, welcome to my DSP. I can add images. I can add basic HTML. I can even add iframes if I want to really show XD prototypes or the coded component that lives in Storybook, whatever you have there. The beauty here is that for all these tokens that are now just agnostic, right? It's a key and a value, as Tor mentioned. Let's say I need my CSS variables now, right? All I have to do, because I selected CSS as my platform there, is finish editing. And when I do that, what's going to happen is we're going to install this build system, this very powerful build system called Style Dictionary that can read the agnostic tokens and convert them into platform-specific code. So now we are installing Style Dictionary locally here in my folder. So it's installing. Once this is finished, we'll be able to then compile the tokens. We started with CSS. So if you see here, the CSS tokens will get compiled. If I open the folder, let's get this list, and you see that all of those tokens that Tor defined in the XD document will be now converted into CSS variables. come on, computer, you can do this. Probably because it's a lot of variables. But oh, there you go. You can see all the variables are here, resolved to the right hex. So any developer using CSS variables can just come here and use this file in their CSS projects to get things faster. Another thing you can do is you can go to DSP settings, and you can now expand. Oh, now I need JavaScript tokens for my React application. I also need, let's see, Android and Flutter, right? And then I save this. It's going to save. I can start editing, make my changes, and finish editing. When I do that, it's going to compile again. And once Style Dictionary finishes running, you will get not only the CSS variables all there, but you're also going to get the Android ones in XML, something for Android Studio and for your Android projects, or let's say Flutter, which is Dart, and JavaScript for your React projects, all compiled. And every time I make a change to things, it will be reflected here. And I can start making things, for example, when I get to my tokens here, I can say, let's say I want to have a danger token, but as an alias, right? That would be more like of a component specific token. So I can start editing. I can create a new token. Let's say this is going to be my component alert token. This is going to be an alias token that will point to that danger token. So when I do that, now I have an alias that's pointed to the danger, and then I can add this to any component here that has, for example, let's say this is the one, the danger one. I can come here and add this token. So we can call it component alert. Can add. So now I can start adding component information, component token information, specific information to my components here. And I can also do things like add snippets. For example, if we look at the card component, let's search for a card component here. Let's see, probably this is the body, card simple, this one. Let's say I want to add a code snippet to this one, right? I can go to the documentation website, and I can find the right location. Let's see, components, card. Let's say this is my card, right? It's the snippet that I need. I can copy this. And again, a lot of companies that have bigger development teams, you can do this programmatically. So the minute you generate documentation, you can also generate your DSP. But now that I have the snippet, I can go here in VS Code. I can start adding the snippet portion. And let's call this card simple. And the type of snippet is probably HTML. And I can change that to anything I want. I'll paste that in. Save. Nice. And again, I can start and do more things here. What I mentioned about using Git is in this project here, I can go to my terminal and I can jump into my ESP folder. And again, I want to check with Git. I just do git init, and I just follow the steps. So now I can use Git and push to GitHub, GitLab, whatever I want to do my work here. Perfect. So now that I have this here, the beauty is as I develop my site, all I type is card. And when I do that, you see that I have here the documentation for this card available in VS Code. I can see the rendition of it. I can see the code snippet. And then if I hit enter here, I can see, I can change the text here, my card. I can see, I can change the image. Let's use the image that it's here, VS Code. And if I save this, because I also have this running, you'll be able to see that running, again, coming from Bootstrap. The minute you have a DSP, the creation process done, the consumption process is much faster, right? You can share the DSP and then developers can do their things. So this is how you can really consume DSPs. We use the Adobe Spectrum example and how you can create one. But the interesting portion is really starts when there's more changes, more updates. So let's say, for example, Tor just pinged me saying there's a change to the design, and let's see how that change can impact both the design with Zach and the development with VS Code.
Yeah. So sorry, Damon, but I'm a designer. I can't stop making changes and tweaks. So what I've done is I've made a couple of changes in the design system. I have updated the library, and hopefully, Zach, do you see those changes coming through?
I just got a notification, and in fact, I do have those changes. So I got alerted since I had consumed the library already, and those assets are linked to that library. As Tor made those changes, I definitely got the update. So in the way XD informs you of any sort of update is we highlight each one of the components or styles with what has been updated. And in this case, it shows me that the button and the card that I've been utilizing throughout my experience has changed. I can easily hover over each one of these little blue link icons, and I can have a compare and contrast. So I can easily see what Tor has changed. In this case, he's turned that blue color to a wonderful XD pink. And I see that it has impacted my cards as well as all the other buttons that I use out throughout the experience. Now I can go through and I can click individually and accept these changes, or you can see right down here that I can just clearly update all. Once I update all those changes now are consumed in my library. The best part about it is if that change were to break my experience in some way, shape, or form, I don't have to accept it right away. I can just have a casual conversation with Tor, share with him on some feedback. But one thing I do want to share with you is, Tor shared that design system with me, but he also didn't give me all the permissions that I might have wanted. But I'm able to consume the design system in a way that I can make it most useful. But I do want to point out that since Tor did really only identify me or give me permissions as a viewer, when I'm in that design system or consuming that design system, it's locked. You see this little lock right down here in the lower right-hand corner of the assets panel, and it tells me that I'm just in read-only. So this really kind of prohibits me from editing any of those main components, but while still allowing me to consume all of the assets and receive any of the updates that Tor has published out to us. Demian, did you get the changes on your end as well?
Yeah, let me go through my process here. So share my screen again. All right. Thanks, design team, for changing things, hopefully based on customer feedback, right? So now that we have that change and we need to pull that change, all you got to do as a developer creating the DSP, right, is you go to DSP settings and you go all the way down, and here you see the link to the library that you added. You just do another import, and now after you do this import, all the changes will come through. And let's see, for example, that card simple, it's still downloading. Let's try this again. There we go. You can see the pink is already showing up, and you can see that card is now updated, and then it's very easy to keep all that information in sync, especially if you have tokens and aliases and all that. All the connections will be preserved, and it's just a matter of doing another import. So that's our story around design systems and really this connection in between designers and developers. Do we have any questions? I don't know, Zach and Tor, that you can see from the chat or feedback? I see a lot of positive feedback so far.
There is a question, Damian, on how VS Code uses rems for font sizes and how that gets translated from XD to VS Code.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way this works is it will bring the unit, not the unit type, but the value as independent from the unit. So for example, if in XD you have 10 as a value, you get here in for example, let's see if we can show you that example. You come as a number like 96, right? And then that number, when style dictionary runs, by default, by the config file that's here, it generates rems. But if you want to change that to pixels or to any other unit, you can go to DSP settings, and then you can just use a different config.js file. And this is placed in your project folder. So for example, I can show you that here. It's in style dictionary, config.js. You just change this guy. You can duplicate to have a separate one. And whatever you have, for example, RAM, I can search for RAM here. And let's see a place that here, for example. So for the CSS transformations, it's now using RAM. And if I want to use pixels, I recommend creating a different config file, because it's going to get overridden if you use the same one. And then once you have that copy made, you just change this to pixel, and then all the units will be now converted to pixels when you compile the tokens.
Thanks, Damian. There's another good one. Let's see. Are changes pushed from both directions? Can you add a token in VS DSP and have it pushed to a CC library?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to talk a little bit about the XD plugin, for example?
Yeah. For now, again, this is our first step in this connection with developers, right? We understood some of the big problems. We're gonna do things. For example, there's a new update to the extension that will land later this month, where we'll be able to, as a developer, you'll be able to move the compile tokens automatically to project folders in your project. So you don't have to copy the compile tokens to your CSS folder or to your iOS Xcode folder. We're gonna do that copy portion for you. So that's one thing. And now it's a one-time pull from the library from XD to VS Code, and then developers can create DSPs in VS Code so that other developers can consume DSPs. And the natural next step is for designers to be able to consume DSPs. There is a plugin for XD called DSP Reader that you can install in XD that can load the DSPs that you create, and then designers will be able to select the colors, apply the colors, the character styles, and all that in XD. But we are looking, from the XD team, we are looking at interest and traction on this whole idea of around DSP. And if there's demand, if people really use that more and more, we can start looking at supporting that natively. But again, it really depends on demand.
Yeah, you know, this is tying design systems and code together has been, I think, a dream of Tor's and mine ever since we joined Adobe. So one of the great questions that just came in is, somebody was curious, like, are there plans to extend this beyond VS Code? You know, what if VS Code is not the standardized IDE within the organization?
This is a great question. We started with VS Code mainly because it is today the most popular code editor in the world. They have 13 million active users, which is insane, like way more than other code editors. But we know, for example, that people creating apps for Android or iOS, they probably use Android Studio or Xcode and all that. So we're trying to, until exploring doing something in Xcode, for example, or Android Studio, how we can move tokens to the right folders, right? So that's the next step that will ship later this month. Is, as a developer, you'll be able to, as you consume a DSP, you'll be able to select where your compile tokens go to. So it's going to save you time. And that could be an Xcode project, for example. Awesome. Any other questions?
I don't see any questions coming in.
That's fine. And again, thank you so much, Zach, Tor, everyone watching, for all the feedback. I see a lot of feedback coming out. We're going to digest everything and try to answer as much as possible. But you can always reach out to us on social media using hashtag Adobe XD. We go live here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on 24 every other Thursday. So again, having this open conversation with you. So if you have feedback, feature requests, constructive feedback is always welcome. Please share and please engage with us.
You know, we did get one more question. And I think this is a question that we've asked, being myself in Tor a couple of times. So if somebody were to update a DSP or update a a style within Visual Studio, will that cascade back up into XD?
If you're using, for example, a plugin to consume the DSP in XD, yes, you see the latest. But for now, as I said, as an initial step, we are only pulling from CC libraries, right? But again, depending on the feedback and all that, we can start looking at exploring how we can make that connection back to CC libraries. Technically, super possible, but again, we just need to prioritize and deliver based on needs and feedback and all that. Awesome. Any other questions? I think we're good, right? Almost 1 hour of great content. Thank you very much, guys, again. Stay tuned. Please keep working with us, sharing your constructive feedback. And yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.